in the NFL, we talked about the tanking stuff. It seems that you never really got that. You never really got the tanking, aspect of NFL stuff, but it feels like there are games now where you just kind of show up and kind of can win these games. The Washingtons of the world, the Miamis of the world. Do you put the Jets in that category? Are they on that level where if you just play a decent game, you're beating these teams?
I think you do right now. I started, Mike, but I think you just put me on the air, so I'll start over. I think they are in that category. I think there was potential to be past that, and I think as the season started, the Jets were one of those teams, especially in the AFC East. You kind of knew it's going to be the Patriots and everybody else, and it was going to be the Jets or the Bills that maybe could get a little bit better, get that second spot because it's a weak division, win some easy games, and maybe even push for a second wild card. Now everything's gone off the rails from just about every perspective, from injuries, and starts with Sam Darnold, but also the coach is not good, which we kind of all knew. We should have known. So it's been a polarity of things come together. And right now, as they enter this particular week, because of the injuries, they're one of those teams that you can put in that category.
Is it the same if Sam Darnold's playing quarterback? Like, is that making a big difference to you that he's not playing this week? Potentially. It looks like it could be going down that road anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a big difference. Sam is a former number 3 overall pick. He's got a lot of talent, a big ceiling, and he's a heck of a lot better than Luke Falk. So remember, you're not only down from Sam Darnold. Trevor Siemian was the backup. He got hurt. So you're down to the third quarterback, and now it's just an absolute mess. Now, Sam told reporters today up in North Jersey that he thinks he can play, so that'll be helpful. But as I said before, with mono, even if he is cleared, and they're concerned about your spleen getting enlarged when you have mono, even if he's cleared by the doctors, he's not going to be 100% right away. That's an illness that takes a lot out of you from a physical standpoint, and he's got to build back up from a conditioning aspect. But, yeah, I mean, he's a big difference from Luke Falk, and even if he wasn't catching on as quickly as they had hoped, and you could argue both ways on that, but it's just night and day from Luke Falk.
So I would have to think, John, that in practice this week, if you're Jim Schwartz and the defensive staff, you take that Le'Veon Bell red penny, right, and you put it on either Clement or Boston Scott or whoever, and all you do is practice runs by Le'Veon Bell, screens to Le'Veon Bell, slot defensive Le'Veon Bell. I mean, that's the only guy that I think that can beat you in any kind of way.
Yeah, I agree, and that's been part of the problem and why Le'Veon can't get going. I mean, everybody knows it. This is the 32nd ranked passing offense in the NFL, which is ironic because the Eagles are the 32nd ranked passing defense. So this is horrid versus horrid, but theirs is a little bit more horrid. And, yeah, I mean, that's it. You stop Le'Veon Bell, you stop the New York Jets right now, and the hope was that coming into the season that Sam would take that next step and some of the receivers would stay healthy. Remember, they got Ryan Khalil out of retirement. They thought the offensive line was going to be better. None of that has happened. So it's turned really, really dark there really, really quickly. And it is. And the strength of the Eagles' defense has obviously been stopping the run. Now, part of that is because it is so easy to throw on them, but they are difficult to run on. So it's going to be tough for the Jets to do much. So, yeah, if you're doing the all-in pod, bet the under. That would be my advice.
I like that, John. So it's a gimme, right? Let's just call it spade to spade here. This is a win for the Eagles, most likely, barring anything absolutely crazy. But I asked Mosher this earlier, and I want to ask you, John. Is this a game where the coaching staff tries some things because they're going to be so much better and most likely winning, is this where you say, all right, let's try this year, or let's see what this guy can do, or let's try this package, or is this just simply a get out and escape and move on type of deal?
Yeah, I think it's more get out and escape and move on. In fact, you think about what's coming up in the 3 games on the road, I would think you would lean towards the opposite, actually. And if you do have something, maybe you want to keep it under wraps and spring it on in a more competitive environment. I think this one is about just taking care of business and moving forward, getting over 500, and then trying to get back to where the team thought it would be as a significant Super Bowl contender. I think this is just one of those types of games. If you do have a bad opponent on your schedule, that's what you're supposed to do if you're a good team. You just handle your business and move on to the next one.
The one thing, John, just hearing you and Ryan have that exchange that came to my mind is that, I don't think the Eagles do anything like, say, working on it like a pitcher in training camp, but I do think, if it's like 33-10, 33-12 there early in the third quarter, it might be a really good opportunity for Doug to get Andre Dillard in the game for Jason Peters and get him some really meaningful reps in a real game.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's a blowout, you can say that about a lot of the starters, and especially some of the aging ones. But, yeah, I mean, I think Andre Dillard has been, I don't want to say a disappointment because this is what you knew or you should have known coming into the season was sort of going to be a red shirt. He was only going to play if Jason Peters was hurt or they needed him in that type of way. But he did get a couple of early snaps as an extra tight end, did not perform well, very small sample size. So maybe you want to get him out there in a more natural position for him and get a little confidence. But I would think that's in any blowout environment for any backup player, but certainly a first-round pick of that ilk. You want to get him going in the right direction as quickly as possible in case you need him, but he's a luxury pick, and Eagles knew it when they took him, and it's worked out well because Jason is playing very well at left tackle, and they have the opportunity to be very patient and very cautious with Andre Dillard.
Hey, John, one area that we talked about a little bit, and Jeff kind of hinted at, Le'Veon Bell. I mean, he's kind of – but the Eagles have had some issues in the past with the pass catching out of the backfield. And a lot of it, their linebackers are a weak spot. And we hear a lot, you should attack the Eagle linebackers. Is that one area where the Jets, if you're putting the game plan together, is we're just going to constantly go to Bell and let him catch the ball on little swing passes, little stuff out of the backfield, and attack the Eagles linebackers?
Well, they could, but that would be helpful if you had to pay attention to their outside receivers, because in theory you could probably – safety on them. You're not going to do that at the beginning of the game, certainly. But if it did start going in a negative direction and the Jets did have something going, that's another problem when you have other playmakers, because you can make easy and quick adjustments and take a linebacker off that role and put a safety on it. So it's just, and that's what the Jets are struggling with. It's hard. I mean, he's all they have. And no matter how good you are in this league, they can take you away if they want to. And that goes for good teams, but if you do that against good teams and really star players, there's other complementary players that are going to gas you and take advantage of that. My question would be back to you guys was who's going to do that for the Jets if Le'Veon Bell starts doing some things and Jim Schwartz tweaks some things. I don't think they have an answer to that, and that's part of the problem.
I can't think. I think we've all tried to figure out what the Jets could pull out of the rabbit's hat. What Adam Gase can do, but it's hard to think of anything that doesn't belie what you see on the football field every Sunday.
Bane's going to have to come onto the field like Dark Knight and literally break the field.
Yeah, John, I saw the at corner Sidney Jones limited again today, so that's better than not participating. It sounds like, if we read reading tea leaves here that he might be able to give it a go. Even if he does, that's really just 4 corners, right? I mean, you'll have Sidney Jones if he plays, you'll have Craig James, you'll have Rasul Douglas, and you have Orlando Skandrick. So I'm curious, do you think Jim will try to come out with, let's say Sidney is not 100%. Do you think he tries to go with Skandrick and Douglas as his outside corners and then move Skandrick inside for nickel and bring Sidney Jones in just to play the outside? Or do you think he'll just go ahead with Jones right away and hope that Skandrick will only play a little bit? Or in just nickel?
I think if Sidney is going to play, he's going to start at outside corner, and they're going to see if he holds up and plays Skandrick inside. And you could argue that they might even go with Craig James outside before they would put Skandrick out there. It's tough to know with Jim because he does some innovative things at times and some things you don't think about. Ultimately, I thought and they might bring up one of the corners they signed on the practice squad as well to give him an extra body, or he's going to play a lot of safeties, I assume, a lot of big nickel. And you might see Malcolm Jenkins playing a lot of slot corner, and he might go about it that way. So he's going to cobble it together, but again, this is the week where it happens. Maybe if it's next week and in some of the issues going on with the Vikings and Stephon Diggs, maybe not as scary as it seems on paper because Kirk Cousins is having such a bad year, but you would be really concerned at the corners. This week, you're kind of just hoping to get the guys healthy and maybe you get Avonte Maddox back, although that's probably unlikely. Ronald Darby, that's probably unlikely, but Sidney would certainly be back. So you get guys healthier and healthier, but, Jamison Crowder, he's not going to scare you. He's a good slot receiver. But there's nothing there with the Jets. There really isn't. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, John, it seems that I know that we said the Eagles have the worst pass defense. They have the worst pass offense. It seems that this week just sets up perfectly with your injuries and what they do poorly, you do poorly. The Jets want to try to run the ball. That's what the Eagles do pretty well. It just seems that even when the Jets, if they complete, like the Eagles want you to catch the ball underneath. Like that's their whole thing. They want you to catch the ball and we'll come up and tackle you. It seems like it just is a styles make fights, bad style for the Jets.
Yeah, it really is. But, I mean, at this stage, they don't have much where you could find a good style fight for them.
They have
kind of struggle.
And I talked about this earlier, like when they signed Bell, it's almost like the Phillies getting Harper. Like the expectations became unrealistic. Like you got Bell and people were like, well, maybe the Jets with Darnold and Bell and then Mosley, that maybe they could be a wild card team. But was it just getting Bell that really threw some expectations way out of whack?
Well, I think it was more than that. I think it was C.J. Mosley on defense, who was playing very well and got hurt his groin early in the season. Was a big, high-profile free agent signing. I mentioned the offensive line was an issue, and they got Ryan Khalil out of retirement, who has been a very good center in the past. They brought in Osemele from Oakland, who's been a very good guard in the past, but it hasn't worked out. The offensive line as a whole hasn't played well. The receivers, Quincy Enunwa getting injured again, so they have issues there. And then Quentin Williams got hurt as well, their first-round pick, who I thought was the most talented guy in the draft coming in. They actually added quite a bit of talent, and then you had the young quarterback who everyone thought maybe could take that leap in his second year, and then he gets mono. So it's been a lot of different things. And, oh, by the way, you also have a coach that can't handle adversity. And he goes into these funks. And, you've got to handle this kind of stuff. And Bill Parcells had that famous advice that 3 or 4 things happen to an NFL coach every day that you don't want to happen. And if you can't deal with it, get another job. Well, Adam Gase should probably get another job because he doesn't deal with this stuff well. So all of that, I mean, if this was a healthy team with a good coach, I think you'd be talking about them differently. But it hasn't worked out for them.
John, I want to get your take on, the play of Carson Wentz. We all love the Pro Football Focus rankings, right? They are great fodder for the NFL fan out there.
Only when Wentz is number one, Mike.
But when, he was at the top of the list
and look
this
who
week.
number 2 is, by the way. You know who number 2 is?
Dak Prescott, right?
Dak Prescott.
Never mind.
So
it's garbage.
So we brought this up yesterday, and I said, look, as much as Wentz, and part of it was they took into consideration the drops. That if these drops were there, they count those drops as catches, and they're saying if those drops were catches, that he's been the best guy in the league. And I say any poll that doesn't have Mahomes at the top, I can't take seriously. But that being said, Wentz being number one, what does that say to the maybe naysayers or detractors who are kind of looking at Wentz about how well he has played? Because I'm not sure that many even the biggest Wentz fan would say, hey, he's playing at an MVP level this year.
Well, I think you do have to take a look at Pro Football Focus, and it has gotten a lot better over the years. They have a lot of all 32 NFL teams are clients of theirs now. They grade like NFL teams grade. They brought in ex-NFL coaches to teach them how to grade. So it is a good indication of what teams think, and teams do grade like that. They're not going to grade the quarterback poorly if the receiver drops a football. So that's where people don't understand. And, they're not grading on spectacular. You just mentioned Patrick Mahomes. Well, he's spectacular. He makes big plays, but they're grading on consistency from play to play. That's how NFL teams do it. That's why you get these chasms where the highlights are what people remember, but coaches always preach consistency. So he's played at a very high level. That's what it means. And
is there more? Is there still a higher ceiling for him to reach? Like, are you seeing?
Oh, sure.
Are you
There's
seeing
always
Carson Wentz kind of still chipping the rust off, and that he's only going to continue to get, better and better?
Well, you would think as the receivers started performing up to what is expected of them, if Deshaun Jackson was out again at practice, so he's going to miss another week with the abdomen. When he ultimately gets back, you would think that part of it gets better, and you would expect it to improve. I think there's two different things. And he's performed his job at a high level to this point. The offense, if anything, has probably been a little bit of a disappointment, probably not because of him, more from, I would say, the skill position players, the receivers and the running backs as a whole over that 4-week span. I think if you look at the offensive line, the quarterback, that has been the strength. And that should be expected to be the strength. I think if you're disappointed in anything, it should be the receivers, because you kind of knew the running backs were okay, but they're going to be up and down. So I think as the unit, there's a lot of room to get better. And nobody's perfect. I mean, Tom Brady's not perfect. Peyton Manning's not perfect in his prime. So there's always room for improvement, but he's been playing at a very, very high level.
Hey, John, I raised this concept or idea on the Inside the Birds podcast with Adam Kaplan the other day, and I wanted your thoughts on it. The idea that, obviously with Ramsey probably off the market because the Jags are trying to keep him, and, Howie may have difficulty finding another corner at the right price for what teams are willing to take. Is there any shot that Howie might look at the receiver market, the D-tackle market, from some of these bad teams, just areas where or D-end even, and try to just strengthen a part of the team that might already be kind of strong or strong enough just to compensate for the weakness at corner? Kind of like how we brought in Jay Ajayi when the running game was pretty good, and that really made them even better 2 years ago?
Yeah, I don't know. I already got the Stephon Diggs question. I don't know.
I was thinking, Geno Atkins from Cincinnati, or just anybody,
I think I prefer Atkins over Diggs. I mean, even I'm not saying Diggs stinks.
I don't know, as disappointing as they've been, I don't know if they have any room for another receiver on this team. Certainly not one that makes the kind of money that he does.
Right.
Then you would have to send people out. Defensive tackle would make a lot more sense. I mean, if I'm Cincinnati, I'm not trading Geno Atkins, but we know the NFL is changing very, very rapidly.
Right.
So anytime those players are involved, you've seen it already. I mean, Howie always makes the call. He offered first and a second rounder for Jalen Ramsey. He offered not as much as he should have for Jadeveon Clowney. Asked about Melvin Gordon. No matter who it is, he's going to ask. So if somebody becomes available, he's going to make that call. And they think this is a team that has a chance to win a Super Bowl. So the window is open, and when the window is open, that's the time you make these moves. So, yeah, I expect him to do something before the trade deadline, and it's something more than Duke Riley. That's just who he is and the nature and what he tries to do. Hopefully it's a better fit. Last year wasn't a good fit when he brought in Golden Tate, and you had that slot receiver with Nelson Aguilar. So I think he's going to do something, but I don't know. It's really hard for me to believe, as bad as Cincinnati is, they would put Geno Atkins on the trade market. But I would have said the same thing about Laramie Tunsil, and he was on the trade market. So
it's a new NFL, man. The trade deadline is very active. People are probably making calls. I think it's kind of cool. The NFL used to be like, no one's trading, don't even. But I feel like now that's changed a bit, and especially a position like defensive tackle. I feel like you can come in and learn that position and play pretty quickly, and it's not like you're learning receiver or quarterback and having to. Yes, you get to learn the defense, but I would think defensive tackle is pretty quick to learn.
Beat the guy in front of you.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. We know Howie is always making the calls, and we'll see what the second. If the secondary has a rough day on Sunday, would really heighten the conversation, don't you think, John?
Oh, well, if they have a rough day against Luke Falk, I think the link might implode upon itself. If Sam Darnold is able to play and they have a rough day, it would still be bad.
Yeah.
But I just and I'm looking at those corners, and believe me, if there was anybody else, I think, in the league coming in, I would be really concerned, because Craig James has had 3 NFL snaps under his belt. Orlando Scandrick has been unemployed for the first 4 weeks of the season. And Sidney Jones seemingly gets a soft tissue injury every time he gets beat, and he gets beat an awful lot.
He does.
So, other than Rasul Douglas, who can
his hamstring hurts.
Count on?
Who would have thought we'd go into the year saying that? Other than Rasul Douglas, who can the Eagles count on?
Crazy.
It's amazing. It is amazing. And Rasul deserves a lot of credit, because he doesn't have – and you can see, you can see what confidence does for a player. Rasul has worked really hard. He understands coverages. He understands what he's going to see. He plays with confidence. He plays with technique, and that makes up for that.
Yeah, that's something that Adam Kaplan brought up yesterday, John, on Sidney Jones. He said the difference is before the snap, he doesn't have a good idea of what's going on, where Douglas sees things beforehand.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, Rasul has picked up sort of the science of it a lot quicker, and the technique and understanding what he's up against as far as his opponents. And he does a lot of film study. And part of that is, you see that a lot with players who are really, really talented, and sometimes they use that talent as a crutch. And maybe if you don't have some of those same physical gifts, you got to work a little bit harder on the technique aspect of it. Yeah. I don't know if that's why it's shaken out the way it has, but it has shaken out that way. I think it's fair to say that. At this point. And then the confidence part, I think, is also big, because Sidney's got no confidence. And then he gets beat, and he's even got less confidence. And Rasul is playing with a lot of confidence right now.
John McMullen, like all guests, Football at 4 is appearing via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And we'll do it again tomorrow. Get your pick and get you ready for Eagles and Jets. Thanks, pal.
All right. Thank you, guys.